Very good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Lasham Daily Briefing for Saturday, the 26th of April, 2025. We'll start as normal with the synoptic, and beginning yesterday lunchtime, see relatively clear air over the south of the UK, with low pressure out to the west with all these associated frontal systems. We cycle that through. We can see midnight last night, we've got this cold front approaching. That low pressure still quite far out into the Atlantic. And then by lunchtime today, it's split off. We've got another low centered a little bit off the west coast of Ireland, and with that bringing quite a few occlusions in front of it. One in particular is here, currently parked just over the west of the UK coastline. It is decaying, and it more or less seems to be stationary there. And there's very little evidence of that by midnight tonight. So expecting that to dissipate more or less in situ. I don't think it's going to be a problem for us other than bringing some of the slightly overcast weather that we have at the moment. Just cycling it through for Sunday, we've got high pressure off the south coast, but a little bit more slack in terms of winds, and we should have some fairly unstable air. So it could potentially be quite a good day tomorrow. And then into next week, where returns the high pressure with easterly winds. But that should bring us some nice temperatures and good training weather. Look at the sat pic just now. You can see that associated cloud from that occlusion very much parked over here. Not a particular direction of flow. If anything, ever so slightly northwards, and not really causing us any issues other than blocking out the sun. Rain radar, there is the evidence of that. We can zoom out and see all the way up along that line where the cloud was leading. But very much like the cloud, it's not particularly moving left or right. If anything, there's a slight northerly flow, but it is gradually dissipating. And the Met Office rain forecast is agreeing with that. We can just run that through, zooming out. And both of those occlusions, so the one that's over our coast here and out over in the Atlantic, very much showing on this picture, but dissipating, and that's 1 o'clock, and there's nothing anywhere near to Lasham. So we don't expect that to be any problem today. Looking at the Foreign Bataf, light easterly winds 0.08 knots with greater than 10 kilometer visibility. A few clouds at 4,000 feet, and there's a prob 30 of poor visibility. That's current at the moment, but it should be clearing up. Spot winds to the south of us, northeasterly 10 knots, reasonably warm up until about 10,000 feet. And to the north of us, a little bit more southeasterly, 160, 150 at 5 knots. So fairly slack winds, generally coming from the east. Just confirming that with windy here, we can see there's a steady east-northeasterly flow. That's what we're expecting on the airfield on the ground today. We can just check that against the Met Office local forecast. Very much light easterly there, suggesting maximum of about 5 knots, gusting up to 12. That should be very pleasant. A little bit more cloud, lower cloud coming in later in the afternoon, probably associated with that decaying front. We're not getting any of the precipitation from it, but we will get that lower or more overcast cloud. Reasonably warm, about 15 degrees. Should feel more or less 15 with the lack of a strong wind, and still a fairly high UV warning in of 4 in the warmest part of the day. GFS, they're suggesting about 15 or 16 degrees with a dew point of 9. And looking out to the west now, you can see the evidence of that sort of easterly breeze, variable in terms of direction, very much blanket overcast here, around 5,000 or 6,000 feet. Chance of that breaking up with some sun getting to the ground, but then filling in later on. And just refresh that. Yeah, we're already up to 10.2 locally at Lasham, dew point of 7.5. Yeah, the sky sight point forecast first. You can see steady top and mid-level cloud cover throughout, with a small gap, maybe around about 11, 12 o'clock. It's still remaining soarable underneath that, up to maybe 2.5 knots, up to 3 to 4,000 feet. And then that's sort of plateauing and dropping off fairly early, around 3:30, 4 o'clock. Light winds, again, double tops, southeasterly or east southeasterly, no more than 8 or 9 knots throughout the day. And now looking at the cross section from sky sight, see that high or mid-level overcast underneath the top cover we have here. It's expecting a bit of Q later on, soarable from about 1 o'clock, 12:30, 1 o'clock, and running until 4 or 5, where that mid-level overcast is going to persist. That small gap there, which is what we're showing on the point forecast, but otherwise remaining like this more or less all day. Okay, looking at the no times for today, just the one, 18 locally to us, and that's live firing at Boston Stacey. To the local airfield brief. Have a quick look at the Odium cross section. Slightly nicer picture than what some of the others were suggesting, not quite as much cloud, but they're still agreeing with the general theme that around 5,000 or 6,000 feet, there's this steady layer of cloud across, beginning with some broken Q and strato Q, and looking at few later on this afternoon, they're predicting thermal strengths of between 2 and 3 knots in the best part of the day. Bookings, so we've got 2 K21s for booked flying. There's a K21 and a K13 for the Women Go Gliding Weekend trial lessons. So if you do see that group around, please be welcoming, make them feel at home. We have a K21 on the casual list of club members, and there's a K13 allocated to Imperial College. We have very good single-seater availability today on both discus and grog fleets, and presently we have 4 on the casual list with 2 instructors. Simulator is going to be in use for much of the day, so it's unavailable, and the front trim remains unserviceable. But nothing to report from 2XL. And in summary, there's low pressure out to the west with associated frontal systems, decaying occlusion, parts over the west of the UK, light easterly winds becoming northerly into the evening. We'll be operating runway 09 today, cables on the grass to the south and aerotail from the north. And please make sure you're ready when the cable or tug arrives. Okay, alongside the Women's Go Gliding event, we've also got the Vintage Group visiting from Holland. So they'll be over at the GHC, and we should see them out on the airfield over the next 3 or 4 days doing some flying. So please welcome them, introduce yourselves, and enjoy their company. As normal, can we please avoid landing or taxiing on the disused runways shown here in red, and please make sure that you're putting the gliders away clean. Too often we're seeing the club kit coming out and it's covered in dead flies or muck. It's not acceptable. So to make sure that we're giving them just a bit of a wipe down, get the worst of it off. This will be the airfield setup for today. Windching as normal off the grass to the south, aeroplane from the north. If for whatever reason there were to be an appetite for a grid, that would be in the usual place on the north grass tucked away in the corner. That's all I have for you this morning. So I'll see you out there. So have a good day, keep it safe, and have fun. Thanks.